I want you to really imagine your worst case scenario. Really picture it. Now let's embrace all the feelings that brings. Welcome it in. Come on in. Allow it to come in. Whether that's shame, panic, guilt, anxiety, depression, low mood. Really embrace it. Really imagine it. Now, as you're embracing it, as you're wearing all the discomfort, as you are really allowing yourself to feel whatever emotion possible, ask yourself this: what am I telling myself to feel this way? Now, what that does, that puts the accountability in your hands. So you then realize that when you feel those negative emotions, that it's down to your perception and how you're viewing something. You triggered yourself. You made yourself feel anxious by viewing this scenario in this way. Maybe you are downing yourself. Maybe you're saying, I am no good. I am bad. I am horrible. I am the total evil scumbag, with the self-downing like thinking. Maybe you're feeling very angry and you are downing other people. You are saying they are no good. They are horrible. I need to prove that they are wrong. I need to show that they are wrong. They shouldn't think that. They're just a horrible, nasty idiot. That's why you're going to be feeling angry. Maybe you're downing your whole life. So as you're embracing, imagine the worst case scenario, you're really welcoming it in. You're thinking, well, life's over now. Life's a waste of time. Life is totally meaningless. Life isn't worthwhile. What's the point of even carrying on? Life is ruined. Totally spoiled. Complete shite. Complete crap. Life's over. Finished. Finito. Done. Right. Lots of life downing going on there, which will lead to conditional life acceptance. Okay, because you're saying if this scenario happens, if this worst case scenario happens, I cannot accept life like that. Okay, so that is conditional life acceptance. You'll notice there'll be lots of demands. So let's say you're feeling very anxious, picturing the worst case scenario, you're feeling totally terrified. What demands are at play? I can't feel this way. Let's say you're suffering with HOCD, okay? Gay OCD, whatever you wish to call it. Are you saying things, I just shouldn't be having these kind of thoughts? I shouldn't feel this way. I just can't feel this way. A lot of this, when we picture the worst case scenario, I hear this a lot. Oh my God, my worst fear's happening to me. It can't happen to me. Boom, there we are. There's the problem. My worst fear can't happen to me. Now, that is not saying you want your worst fear to happen. Acceptance is not agreement. You're not saying you just want your worst case scenario to happen and not give a shit. That is not true. That is not the aim, because that is impossible, right? But saying, I cannot face my worst case scenario. It can't happen to me. My worst possible fear just mustn't happen to me. Well, I'm sorry to break the news to you, but people face their worst case scenarios quite regularly. And you'll see many people, if you look around, maybe you search online, maybe you watch a documentary, maybe you read an article, you'll see people who have faced their worst case scenario and more, and again, and again, and again. Okay, so by saying this can't happen to me is complete and utter crap, I'm afraid, because it can happen to you and it may happen to you. That's not saying that it will and that it is happening. You're not saying that. Acceptance is an agreement. But even if it did happen, even if it were real, because it can happen, anybody's worst case scenario could happen, no matter whether they want it, no matter if they like it or not. Okay, so saying it can't happen is implying that it just isn't physically possible for it to happen to you. Well, that is nonsense, because it can happen. right? Saying it can't happen is implying that the universe is listening, that if you were about to face your worst case scenario, so let's say your worst case scenario is maybe getting diagnosed with cancer, which would be lots of people's worst case scenario, very sad thing to happen. If that can't happen, it wouldn't physically be possible. So the doctor would be telling you, but they wouldn't be able to get the words out of their mouth because it just wouldn't be able to happen. You watching this video just couldn't face your worst case scenario. So they'd say, but I can't say it. The universe, some higher power is telling me that I just can't physically tell you this because it can't happen to you. Complete nonsense, okay? Because your worst case scenario can happen. Like there's some universal should and universal rule of what can and can't happen to you. It doesn't exist, I'm afraid. And if you're struggling to break that down, you're going to find it very difficult because OCD will keep latching to the worst case scenario and go, well, no, it's going to happen. It will happen. Oh my God, what if it does? What if, right? That's what it's going to do. Let's look for the catastrophizing, the big one. When I do this on my coaching calls, I tell you to really imagine worst case scenario. And if I had £1 for every time somebody told me that their worst case scenario is the worst thing ever and the worst thing possible that could ever happen to them, I'd probably be the richest guy on the planet. Oh, it's terrible. Oh, it's catastrophic. Oh my God, it's just the worst possible thing ever. Terrible. Horrendous. Oh my God, no, horrendous. Now, I wouldn't expect somebody to think of their worst case scenario and go, yeah, thumbs up for me, mate, all good. Obviously not, okay? I'm very realistic. But when you're using terribilizing thinking, catastrophic thinking, when you're catastrophizing and just blowing it out of proportion, going, oh my God, if this happened, that's it, over, terrible, worst thing ever. Couldn't ever bounce back from that. That is crossing the line. That's going to haunt me forever. I'm done. My life is done if that happens. Just couldn't ever bounce back from that. Couldn't ever rebuild, nothing. Gone. Complete, awful, horrible. All the words you want to use. Now, look for that catastrophic-like thinking. Okay? You'll notice it. You've got to really dig deep. Many people say, oh, I'm feeling very anxious, Sam, but I don't know why. I'm afraid you do. You've got to dig deeper. You've got to find the problem. You've got to uproot the source of the problem. What is it that's making you feel that way? Because you're not just very anxious for no reason. That's not true. Because if I told you to imagine, let's say you stole a chocolate bar when you were 12 years old from the local spa. Now really imagine that. Yeah, I'm feeling no anxiety at all. Well, so it's not an automatic feeling, it's because of what you're telling yourself, right? Because you're not catastrophizing that. You're not saying, oh my God, my life's over if I stole a chocolate bar. I'm not advocating stealing chocolate bars here. Please don't do that. But I'm showing how the beliefs are different, okay? So you're not saying, I must not steal a chocolate bar. You're not saying it would be terrible. You're not saying, I can't stand stealing chocolate bars. You're not saying my life will be over. You're not calling yourself the worst evil scumbag ever if you stole a chocolate bar. So the beliefs are different, okay? Beliefs are so important. Perception is everything. It's the power of perception. So when I'm hearing that, I don't know, Sam, I don't know why I'm feeling very anxious, you've got to dig for it. You've got to find it like as a pot of gold and go, right, this pot of gold is going to lead me to recovery from OCD. This pot of gold is going to lead me to a robust level of recovery. This pot of gold that I find, and all you're trying to find is the root source of the problem, the beliefs, the fears, how you're viewing the perception, so on, the catastrophizing. If you can start finding that and identifying that, you're going to go a long way towards overcoming this. Okay? It's very important. Now, really picture the worst case scenario. And I'm going to say to you this. I'm going to say, let's say your worst case scenario was true. How can we shift our perspectives on this? This is a very important video because the worst case scenario is what it all boils down to, our complete non-acceptance of the worst case scenario. Now, if this were true, how can we learn to accept this? First of all, what would the pros and cons be? Now, you're going to reel off millions of cons to me. I know, there will be many cons, hence why it's called your worst case scenario. There'll be many cons. Of course, there'll be many negatives, there'll be many disadvantages, obviously. The challenging part is finding a pro, a positive, something to be maybe optimistic about if the worst case scenario did happen. You can find it. You can really try and find it if you uproot it. Okay, really think, what can I get from this situation? Okay, I'll give you an example. Let's say your worst case scenario was dying of cancer. So let's say getting diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and you're going to be dead in 3 months. Okay, very, very sad. Very upsetting thing to go through. Now you could say, what the hell pro could I get from that? What is the pro of that? And it also links into another question I'm going to ask is, what good outcomes can I get from this? Now, of course, there's not going to be many. Of course, you're not becoming delusional here. But let's really think about this. Now, if you compare that to somebody who gets hit by a bus and they drop dead within seconds, if you compare that to if I just had a heart attack right now and I'm dead, right? If you compare that to that, now what good could come from me maybe getting diagnosed with a very sad illness that means I sort of gradually fade and die and I'm dead? Now, at least I could reminisce for my remaining 3 months on the planet. I could reminisce on the memories that I've had. I could maybe, if I've got a month left I'm at a functioning level, and I can maybe tick off a few things on my bucket list that I want to do. Maybe I can sort out a few financial things that I want to bear. I want to send me money if I die. Maybe I want to write me will. Maybe I want to say goodbye to my family. Somebody who's died, get hit by a bus, if you offered them right now, you can come back, you can live for 3 months, and you can say goodbye to all your family, all your relatives, all the people that you've ever known. I'm sure they'd shake my hand before I even stop talking. They'd go, fuck me, yeah, go on, I want to say bye. I'd love to say bye to my wife. I'd love to say bye to my husband. I'd love to say bye to my children. Okay? They would do anything for that. Now, somebody with cancer, very, very sad, very upsetting. Okay? But there would be there would be a way to look at that situation of, wow, somebody else didn't have that chance to say goodbye. Somebody didn't have that chance to reminisce on past experiences and what they've achieved in their life and so on. Some people didn't have the chance to think, oh my God, at least I was told this. At least I could prepare for this. If I drop dead right now, I can't prepare for anything. I'm gone. No one would even know until they came and found me. Right? And you can use this with any situation. That's quite an extreme example, but that's a good one to break down, because that is a lot of people's worst case scenarios, dying of an illness. So you can try and view it differently. Ultimately, if you can't make peace with a worst case scenario, OCD holds the upper hand to your life. It will call all the shots to your life. You will live life on OCD's terms unless you can break down a worst case scenario. There's no way around it, I'm afraid. I would ask the person, imagine their worst case scenario, what could you still be grateful for? Fucking nothing, Sam. Nothing. Life's over. That's not true. Even if you're sat in jail, another worst case scenario for many people is sat in jail. You're telling me there's nothing you could still be grateful for. You're telling me that somebody who's maybe homeless, living in terrible conditions, somebody who's living in poverty, wouldn't trade your life with a roof over their head, getting fed meals, getting access to clean water, maybe have a chance to even read a book and study something and speak to people and exercise. So there's stuff you can be grateful for. You're not trying to say it's a good thing. You're not trying to say it's a place you want to be. Of course not. But it's not all just total negative, terrible, awful, worst thing ever. Because there's no wonder OCD latches to it. There's no wonder. Okay, so you've got to try and shift your perspective on it. It's crucial, absolutely vital. I'm very passionate about this because I was terrified of so many worst case scenarios. I had to change, think outside the box, be proactive, use my initiative to change my perspective on the worst case scenario. The question that changed my life, these two questions right now. How could I, so really imagine my worst case scenario, how could I transform or benefit my life from this undesired outcome, from this unwelcome outcome? How can I change my life from it? When I thought of it like that, I thought, well, no matter what I go through, I can learn valuable lessons from this worst case scenario. And you can, no matter what, okay? You can. If you got sent to jail, for example, you could learn lessons from that, right? If, for example, your partner leaves you, you can learn so many lessons from that, okay? There's so many worst case scenarios I could reel off. There's so many, because you hear it all. Just think, what am I absolutely terrified of? And how can I use that experience? OCD, being stuck with OCD is a great one. If you were stuck with OCD, with fear for the rest of your life, how can I use that to transform my life? Well, think of all the people that you met with OCD, virtually, through the OCD recovery, WhatsApp groups and the community. You never met those people. Never met people that you could relate to if you weren't stuck with OCD. Right? You wouldn't have the chance to learn rational thinking. You wouldn't have the chance to learn unconditional acceptance. You wouldn't have the chance to be in a community to connect with people if it wasn't for OCD. OCD was the best thing to ever happen to me. because it's taught me so much of just dealing with life problems, dealing with adversities, dealing with hassle, dealing with hardships. It's taught me so much. If I just focused on the negative of the suffering of OCD, I would not be talking to you right now, because I'd be like, oh, whine, complain, victimizing, rather than thinking, well, what the fuck is this teaching me? It's teaching me so much. So that is how I've used OCD, a real suffering of my life, probably the biggest battle I've ever faced in my life, to overcome that, but also to transform my life for the better, to improve my life, to enhance my life, to benefit my life. Okay, really think about this. And the last question to leave you on this was huge. How can the person, imagine the worst case scenario, have compassion for themselves, even if the worst case scenario was true? How? How can they have self-acceptance? How can they use the worst case scenario to better their understanding, to better their knowledge of unconditional acceptance of themselves? How can they, like I said, have more self-acceptance, but for others as well? How can they use the worst case scenario to have more compassion for others? Maybe you look at somebody living your worst case scenario. Great exercise or great chance to apply unconditional acceptance. Great way. How can you have not only compassion for others, but more acceptance for life from this worst case scenario? Understanding the realities of life, that life isn't owing you anything, the universe doesn't owe you anything. So you can use the hardship of facing your worst case scenario, if it did come to that, if it were real, how you could use that to view life a lot differently, to change your perspective on life, and therefore improve your life, to become healthier, to become happier, to become better at dealing with problems. How can you use it to your advantage? Okay, how can you use this real hardship that you may face if you face your worst case scenario to really go for life even more after, when sort of the dust settles and you get over the worst case scenario and you rebuild your life, whatever the worst case scenario may be? How can you use that to really have compassion for yourself and put yourself first and respect yourself more, accept yourself more, and really do things that you want to do? Okay, I would say self-love, but that can be a slippery slope of self-esteem. But just having that ultimate unconditional self-acceptance of yourself, of others, so you have more compassion for others. Maybe your interaction with others gets better. Maybe your communication with others is better. Maybe you enjoy more time with other people because now have compassion for others a lot more, and then therefore enhance your life and enhance your relationships and improve your relationships with others and so on. Maybe you're not whining anymore because you've changed your perception on life and how life doesn't owe you anything, and you've changed your perception on deservedness and entitlement and, things shouldn't be this way. Therefore, perhaps you just deal with problems much better because you deal with it yourself. You put it into your own hands and think, well, what can I control? What can I deal with? How can I sort this? If I can't, I have to learn to accept it, and having the wisdom to know that difference between what you can control and what you can't. Okay, very, very important. So this video is how you can use your worst case scenario and really imagine it and really break it down to really overcome not only OCD, but dealing with all life challenges, the way life throws problems and hassles and adversities your way. Very important to think about. If you need help with that, please email phil@ocdrecovery.com. You can get in touch with the coaches here. I'm Sam. You got Rob, you got Nick, you got Momin, and you got Gemma. So email Phil to get in touch and we can help you break down your worst case scenario. And if you have liked this video, please leave a like. That'll be much appreciated. You take care and we'll speak again. Bye-bye.